Welcome to the Pharmacist's Voice Podcast, episode 338. I am your host, Ohio pharmacist and birthday girl, Kim Newlove. My birthday is on Saturday, July 12th, 2025. The show notes for this episode are on thepharmacist'svoice.com/podcast. This is a follow up to episode 325, which was about podcasting best practices for first timers for remote podcast interviews, like on Zoom or Squadcast or Riverside or whatever have you. Today's episode is about podcasting best practices for in person podcast interviews as opposed to remote. All right, we're talking about in person, so let's set the stage. If the interview is in person, you will be sitting probably across the table from someone or right next to them instead of connecting via the internet, right? So, in my humble opinion, being a guest in person is much easier than remote podcast interviews. You just have to show up on the right day at the right time and do what is asked of you. You might be in the host's recording space. They might come to your house or your pharmacy. You could be at a conference. I have done this before. I have been the host and I've had several guests at the same conference. It works out great. Sure, there's background noise, but everybody knows you're at a conference, so who cares? You might be at a neutral site, though, like a conference room at a library. I have definitely done that for my local podcast, which is called the Perrysburg Podcast. You could also have some other scenario. There's lots of places to record in person. I have recorded in a moving car before with my friend Greg. Don't recommend it, but he was the guest, I was the host. It worked out, and I can't remember which episode that was. It might be 141. But, anyways, look for Greg Cramp, my episode with Greg Cramp. Yes, we were in a moving car. The bottom line is there are several ways to record a conversation in person. No matter where you record, your three goals are number one, to sound good, number two, have a conversation, and number three, tell the audience what they need to hear. Don't BS them. Don't tell them that kind of what they need to hear. We'll talk about what they need to hear in just a minute. Now, these are the exact same three goals from my episode about remote podcasting best practices. It's just that the how is a little different when you're in person. If you've been invited to be on an in person podcast interview, well, episode might just help you understand what to expect so you have a great experience. Good luck to you if you are an upcoming podcast guest. Now, let's talk about sounding good first. Sounding good is very important. When you are a guest in person, sounding good depends on how well you use that microphone that is provided to you, how you use your voice, how much you move around, what you're wearing, and background noise. You need the audience to focus on what you're saying instead of how you sound. Bad sounding audio turns people off. They won't listen to you for very long if you don't sound very good. What can you do to sound your best? Well, the host of the podcast should do a sound check before they record your conversation. When I do my local in person podcast interviews, I typically ask three questions. The first one is, what is your favorite pizza place in Perrysburg? And what I'm trying to get the guest to do is to use the letter P. And if they pop their P by talking directly into the microphone, I just tried to do it there and hopefully it sounded that way. But if they pop their P, meaning their breath goes on the mic and makes a very loud sound of the breath going on the mic, that's bad. So I'm trying to get them to say the letter P to see if they sound good or bad. And then I also ask if they have any pets because people either get really loud because they love their pets or they get really quiet because they've experienced the loss of a pet. So I like to see what volume changes I might be dealing with. And then the last question is, if you could change one thing in Perrysburg, what would you change? And typically people say something like, a certain part of town that has a traffic light or doesn't have a stop sign, that they would like to see a stop sign, that type of thing. And then I will listen to the playback because it's only a couple of minutes. And if I hear something I don't like, I may reposition their microphone. And if I do that, then they get the bonus question, which is, what is a store or service that does not exist in Perrysburg that you would like to come to town? And the number one answer there is Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's apparently is a food store. I have never been to one. I have a son that lives in Cincinnati for school, and next time I go to Cincinnati to visit him, I will be checking out Trader Joe's. That ends my little spiel about doing my own sound checks as a host. Hopefully, if you are doing some sort of a podcast interview in person, your podcast host will ask you a few questions, have some exchanges, question, answer, and they will use that information to make you sound great. That is how you sound your best. You have a mic check. But in addition to that, there's other things you can do. For example, if you would like to sound confident, you need to support your voice with breath. I am not telling you to project your voice and shout like you're a cheerleader in an auditorium. No, not at all. What I'm saying is that breathing before speaking really helps. I used to have this problem called muscle tension dysphonia. I have it a lot less now because I support my voice with breath, among other strategies. So support your voice with breath too. I would also recommend that in addition to mic technique and supporting your voice with breath, you hydrate well. Hydrate well the day before and the day of the interview, and bring water with you to the interview. At this time, I want you to pretend that you're in the host's recording space. Imagine that you're in a conference room at the library. The microphone is positioned exactly where it is. You are supporting your voice with breath. You have water. And now I want you to think about sitting up straight and speaking clearly. You should feel relaxed, but don't slouch. And then also, once you're in position and you sound good, don't move around. You can talk with your hands. I'm talking with my hands right now, and it does not affect the quality of my voice. But what I'm saying is, even though you're moving your hands, don't move your mouth. Don't move your mouth closer to or farther from the microphone. I hope you see what just happened there. If I get really close, it sounds like this. And if I get really far away, it sounds like this. It's called migrating. So people migrate to or from the microphone. That is a common problem with first time guests. So just be mindful. Be mindful that you may feel like going closer to or farther away from the microphone. Once you're mindful of it, just don't let it happen to you. Also, what you wear during an in person podcast interview matters. Don't wear jewelry that makes noise and clanks around, and don't wear fabric that swishes. If you do have dangling jewelry, just take it off. Whether it's earrings, a necklace, or bracelets, just take them off, put them on the table next to you, and don't touch them. Your audience will hear the noise if you wear that dangling jewelry, and it will be a distraction. Plan what you wear and just, like I said, leave the dangly jewelry at home. I often just wear a cotton t shirt and jeans or scrubs, and I limit my jewelry to just a wedding ring and stud earrings. Just really simple. Note that scarves and hoodies can get in the way of microphones. Wear whatever you like, just make sure that your mouth has a clear path to the microphone, no matter what you wear. Now, background noise can be distracting. We're still talking about how to sound good here. So keep in mind that background noise on a podcast recording can detract from what you're trying to say. People will be focusing on that background noise instead of what you're saying. So find a time to record when other people in your house are not making noise. I'm assuming they're in your house, okay? Whatever the recording space is, just pick a time when other people are not making noise, whether it's washing dishes watching television, mowing grass, watching kids that are playing some sort of video game where they're shouting. I don't know what happens in whatever recording space you're going to, but some of the things that I have encountered in my own home are that. I have had somebody work on my house before, so I've had to mute my side of the conversation when it's been a remote podcast recording. If you're in person, you can't really mute yourself and have it turn out okay. So just pick a time when people are not making noise. Keep your pets away from the recording space unless you want to introduce them on the show. Maybe you want your dog's collar to be clicking around with the dog tags and you want to introduce your dog buddy to your audience. Who knows? Just keep in mind that unless you intentionally put your pets away from your recording space, they're going to end up in the recording. Turn off your HVAC unit during the recording, whether it's summertime and you've got your air conditioner on, or it's winter time and your heater turns on. Those sounds can be really loud and distracting and impossible to get out of the audio. So turn off your HVAC unit. It's just a best practice, whether you're the host or the guest. Choose your room wisely. Stay away from windows and flat surfaces. Why? Because they reflect sound. And for that reason, your kitchen is the worst room in your entire house to record in. It is loaded with flat surfaces, from the refrigerator to the dishwasher to the stove to possibly a window over your sink. The kitchen's the worst place in the house to record. On the other hand, what's the best place in the house to record? A clothing closet. Are you going to invite a host into your clothing closet? Not likely, but it is technically the best place to record a podcast interview because it has tons of sound absorbing fabric, all of your clothing, and it might even have some carpet too. But, anyways, think about something that is close to your clothing closet, like a room that has carpet and curtains, maybe some furniture. That is a really good choice. And as with remote podcast interviews, silence your phone and any alarms. Maybe you've got a laundry alarm on your phone, or maybe you're recording in your home or your host's home and there's a microwave timer set for a casserole, or maybe the security system is set so that when the door opens, it says door open. Just turn that off during the interview so you don't have any risk of that going off during the recording. There you go. Let's talk about your second goal: have a conversation. The host invited you to be on their show to have a conversation. The host typically asks all the questions. So, what do you think your job is? Your job as a guest is to answer the question that was asked. Listen, non answers do not help the audience. So, keep the audience in mind. If there is a topic you want to avoid, don't just give a non answer. Think ahead and let the host know before they press record what you want them to avoid. There is no need to give non answers to questions that you should have told the host to avoid in the first place. Most hosts do play nice and they don't ask questions that you tell them not to ask. Now, speaking of things to do before the host presses record, it's important to show up on time for your podcast interview so that you and the host have plenty of time to talk about questions to avoid, which we already talked about, getting comfortable with one another by having some pre interview banter, maybe talking about pizza places in Perrysburg, pets, things that you would change about the town, or stores you want to come to the town. Just have a little conversation. Do a mic check, talk about how long the interview should take, and discuss any time constraints that you have. Also, this is an important one: ask if the host can edit. If the host cannot edit, they don't know audio engineering, and they can't edit out your mistakes, you need to be able to correct yourself in real time during the conversation. Now, as a podcast host, I edit 100% of my interviews. If your host does not edit, it's up to you to find that out before they press record. It's very important to know if they can edit or not. Now, let's talk about your third goal, which is to tell the audience what they need to hear. Now, I'm not saying that you should be lying and telling them what they want to hear. I'm saying tell them what they need to hear. How you answer questions matters. I highly recommend that you learn about the audience before the host records the conversation. Let's say that the host is a career coach. It's a career coach who helps pharmacists create their ideal job description so they can pursue their ideal job. And let's say that you, as the guest, are a former retail pharmacist who left their retail job and started their own consulting company. You are now doing what you love, you're earning a great income, and you are the happiest you have ever been. The audience wants badly to hear your story, so they have hope for their future too. When you know the audience, you can cater your answer to serve their needs. You can think about what they need to hear. The third goal is to tell the audience what they need to hear. So you can think about what they need to hear if you know who the audience is. The audience wants to hear your story, where you went from retail pharmacy to consulting and what they can learn from your choices. You don't have to tell your life story, but I would definitely have 3 to 5 clear points that could help the audience. When I say have 3 to 5 clear points, these are bullet points, by the way, not paragraphs. You should definitely think about what you want to say before you need to say it, but don't read a paragraph during the recording. In summary, providing value to the audience should be your number one priority. They want to hear the good stuff, so please don't bury the lead. Let's review, and then I'll give you a bonus. No matter where you record, whether it's in person or online, your 3 goals are to number one, sound good, number two, have a conversation, and number three, tell the audience what they need to hear. Now, here's the bonus. This is pretty much right out of episode 325. As with remote podcast interviews, be a generous guest. Not only should you sound good, have a conversation, and tell the audience what they need to hear, but also during in person podcast interviews, if the host asks you to give them your bio, your social media and website links, a headshot, your company logo, your book cover art, your podcast artwork, your company colors, etc., provide everything by the date requested. If you don't, what happens? Your information may not make it into the show notes, your headshot or podcast artwork or your book cover art, whatever, may not make it into the podcast artwork for the show or the social media posts that the host is going to push out to advertise this podcast episode. Being a podcast guest is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to promote yourself. So get your stuff to the podcast host on time. If you want to be an even more generous guest, I would say that you could ask how you can help the host promote your episode when it goes live. For example, you might have a newsletter and you can share it there. Maybe you have a YouTube channel and you could take the audio file and a thumbnail of some sort and upload it to your own YouTube channel. If the host tags you on social media, maybe you can share that on your own social media pages like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. And also, you can thank them publicly. And if there are listener comments, engage with them. Maybe you can even connect with their audience as well. And I'm going to tell you like a super old school thing to do: send a handwritten thank you note or an email or a DM message. So the thank you note, handwritten, that's old school, but new school, I guess, is email or DM message. Any way you slice it, show gratitude and offer to refer other guests. In review, be a generous guest. There is a lot that you don't have to worry about when you record in person. There are no worries about using the right internet browser like Chrome versus Safari, or Firefox. Do they still even have Firefox? I don't know. I'm leaving that in. Anyways, if you go in person, typically you don't have to worry about headphones, a strong Wi Fi connection, and so on. There are so many things that you do not have to worry about when you're in person. So if you get the chance to be an in person podcast guest, just follow my advice from this episode and you'll be well ahead of the curve. That does it for my podcasting best practices for in person podcast interviews. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacist's Voice podcast, episode 338. To find the show notes, go to thepharmacist'svoice.com, click the podcast tab, and then find episode 338. In the show notes, you will find the link to part one of this two-part series, my book about planning your podcast, my websites, my social media links, and more. Everything you need is on thepharmacist'svoice.com. If you know someone who could use these in person podcasting best practices, go ahead and share this episode with them. Go ahead and subscribe to this podcast for all future episodes. We have a lot more coming out in 2025, and have a great weekend. I will be turning 47 on Saturday, July 12th. Happy birthday to me. I'll talk to you next week when I'm 47.